Hi, my name is Emma Fassio and welcome to my YouTube channel. Now, today I want to talk to you about the gauge and the swatch in the round, because if you're going to knit like a top-down sweater, you need to understand if your gauge is different when you knit straight or in the round. For example, for me, I have the same gauge if I make the swatch in flat or in the round, because I make knit and purl stitches with the same gauge. But this is not always the case. It can happen that when you work in the round, since you're making to make stockinette stitch only knit stitches, it will be different if you make a stockinette stitch sample in the not in the round, so worked flat, because you're going to work knit stitches and purl stitches, and most often there is a different gauge tension in the while we make the two different stitches. So in this video I want to show you a quick way to make a swatch in order to understand our gauge while knitting in the round without casting on 70-80 stitches and making like a collar or a hat. So there is this quick way, and most often it can also happen that when we knit with the straight needles, we have a certain gauge, and with circular ones another one. So we'll show you how. Before showing you the sample and how to make it, and I will also show you a trick to make neat borders, I wanted to talk to you all about the importance of gauge and the swatch sample, as I talk in the video that you can find on my YouTube channel, because stitch pattern matters, because and I will put the link below so you can directly go to that video if you need to. You can look here at the samples that I made, the different swatches for that video in the garter, bibbing, and stockinette stitch. And there, as you can see also here in this video, you can see the importance of stitch pattern, because garter stitch is different from stockinette stitch, and from ribbing, the dimensions that you obtain in your swatch are different. So you must consider this. And in that video, I also talk about how you can use gauge in a creative way. So it's important, because in this in the sample I showed you before, I had casted on the same number of stitches and I've knitted the same number of rows. It's important now. Here you can see my swatch, the importance of the swatch dimensions, because it has to be like 15 for 15 centimeters, so we can measure inside the 10 centimeters. And I will show you also the trick at the end. Okay, I have a swatch here, the one knitted in the work in flat, but it's important just to show you why it's important to have a swatch that's bigger than 10 centimeters for 10 centimeters in order to measure in the center your gauge. So now I will show you at the end of the video also how to make the neat border, because as you can see here, we have really loose loops, and here it's much neater and it's easier then to work it. Now we are going to start from the beginning, and I will show you how to make this swatch, for a quick way for a swatch in the round. So I've casted on a certain number of stitches that will make for me a square that's going to be bigger than 10 centimeters for 10 centimeters. And let's say I've casted on 30, 40 stitches, but I'm not going to cast on all the 70, 80 stitches that I would have to cast on to make a real swatch in the round. I have to look at the thread from my ball, because I will show you now that we're going to slip all the stitches toward the needle, the point that's going to be going in my left hand, because I'm going to simulate a work in the round. So I'm going to take the thread from the skin from the ball, and I'm going to make a loop in the back because I'm going to start to work on the other side. The important thing is that the loop must be loose enough, and do not confuse it with the tail, because we need to knit with the thread from the ball. And make a really loose loop, because then it's going to be easy and comfortable to measure your gauge. So now I'm going to start to knit all the stitches. At the end I will show you how to make the neat and polished border. So we're going to knit all the stitches because we're going to simulate, we're going to make our swatch as for stockinette stitch. And when we work in the round, we make all knit stitches. This is important because often we have a knit stitch with a different gauge from a purl stitch. That's why the swatch might not be the same one if we make a flat one, or if we knit in the round, even if with this method. So we knit up to the end of all the stitches that will make up my sample, and you see here how the stitches might get loose. So I take all the stitches and I bring them all, I let them slide all to the other point that's going to go in my left hand, because I'm going to simulate. I'll test if the loop is just loose enough to measure my gauge and it's just perfect. So I can just go ahead and work another row, but it's going to be like we are knitting in the round. So I'll just go like this with a thread and just make sure that my loops are of the same length, and I can go like this with my hands. So I'll make all the loops of the same length. Now I can just start to work another row, but we know that this is simulating my round knitting in the round. So I'm just going to knit all the stitches up to the end, and this is much quicker because we only cast around 30-40 stitches, and we don't have to knit in the round all the 70 or 80 stitches. So, and it simulates the knitting in the round because we are always outside of the project and we make all knit stitches. So now we work up to the end of the stitches, and when we do the last two stitches, we see already how loose there was the first and last stitch are. So now we're going again to slip all the stitches toward the other needle point, and then that's going to go in my left hand. Then I'm going to make another loop in order to, though this is too short, so just pull it like this in order to, have all of the same length. And then I'll take the other point and I just start knitting all the stitches like this. And now I'm going to take the other sample that you have seen at the beginning, because I want you to show you here the borders, see all the loops are the same, and then it's going to be much easier to work. See here how loose the loops are, and it's because we only made the knit stitches, and since we have that long thread, it's natural that the loop is loose. But here in the last here you can see how it worked much better and how it's much neater, and it's going to be also easier to measure my gauge. So what happens now, I take the thread that I'm going to use to work and I make the loop in the back. I make sure that this one is of the same length as the other ones, and see how loose that loop looks like. So now that stitch under there. So now I'm just going to work the first stitch, and instead of making a regular knit stitch as I've showed you before, as we are usually used to do, I suggest to knit through the back loop, because that twisted stitch will make a stiff and nicer, neater edge So now I knit all the other stitches as if I'm making, stockinette stitch in the round. See, this is my sample. And now I just work all the stitches by knitting to the last one. And when I get to the last stitch, I am not going to make a regular knit stitch, but I'm going to, like this, but I'm going to knit it through the back loop like this. Go through the back loop and see how much neater my edge is going to be. Of course, look at the loops on the stitches below, how loose they are because of the thread, but by knitting through the back loop, it's much neater and easier. So I now work all the stitches I need for the height, so I'm going to bind off at the end so I can just wash and lock my swatch in order to have, as I'm going to wash and lock the garment, so I can measure my gauge in 10 centimeters. I hope that you have found this video tutorial useful, and if you have any questions, doubts, or even suggestions, you can write in the comments below, and I will answer you daily, so don't worry, just write, because it's so nice to share our passion for creativity and knitting, and it's so important to understand all the potential techniques that we can use in order to make what we like the best. And because when we wear something that we enjoy, that we have made, and that really follows and share our taste, it just makes us feel well, and it's great to just wear it. So see you on the next video tutorial, and if you want, you can follow me also on Instagram as Fassio. Happy creativity. Bye!